Evening. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order. The next Board of Education meetings are a special meeting on Thursday, January 2nd at 7 p.m. and Saturday, January 4th at 8:30 a.m. I have not prepared much in the way of remarks. Anybody who wants to watch the state of the town who did not has already listened to me talk more than enough. But I'll wish everyone a very happy and healthy holiday season. And with that, I'll turn it to Alan. Thank you.
Public comment.
Public comment, just kidding.
Good evening.
Sarah.
If anybody in person or online would like to participate in public comment, please come up to the podium or use the raised hand icon and wait to be recognized. Once you've been recognized, please state your name and address for the record and note that you will have up to 3 minutes to comment. We have no raised hands or nobody in person.
Thank you, Cass. Alan.
Good evening, everyone, and congratulations to the Blue Wave football team who defeated Notre Dame, the West Haven, last weekend. And congratulations to them, and good luck to them against New Canaan. We have our work cut out, I'm sure, but good luck to the kids, and we look forward to cheering them on at the weekend. Congratulations also to a senior at the high school, Abby O'Kane. I don't know, Brenna, whether you know Abby or not, but she was a recipient of the 24-25 National Society of Daughters of the American Revolution Good Citizen Award for exemplifying patriotism, citizenship, dependability, and service to our community. There are a few activities I just want to point out just for their nature. One was the Technology Educational Department who put on the Shark Tank last week, and we were able to use the video wall from the Darien Foundation for their projects. So congratulations on a successful evening. Special Education Day was December 2nd. Thank you to our CSPTO committee members and the CDSP for supporting our staff and our students, and providing them with books and meals and various other activities. So thank you for supporting that event. The annual Darien Youth Survey will be administered towards the end of January. I'm just sort of flagging it now a little bit. There'll be more to come in the new year about it, but I just wanted to give you a wee sense. In collaboration with the town, the Darien Police Department, the district, just through communication that I'll send out, is sharing some educational materials with parents on e-bikes, their use, information about them, and particularly how to use them safely. Upcoming meetings, we have the Policy Committee on Tuesday, special meeting on January 2nd, Board of Education statutory meeting on January 4th, and this Friday's facilities meeting has been cancelled. So as the chair has done, I'd like to wish our families, students and staff happy holidays, make some special memories, and much success in the new year.
Thank you, Alan. Student representative reports, Brenna.
Good evening. We wish Ryan all the best of luck. He is currently attending our sports captains meeting for our winter season. And best of luck to the Blue Wave football team, as Doc Bradley mentioned, in an amazing showcase against Notre Dame West Haven. And again, congratulations to New Canaan. As I was saying to Ms. Dunn earlier this morning, it's really a testament of the talent and ability of both teams. So we look forward to seeing our friendly rivals once again. Our music department will be holding our winter Spectrum Showcase concert on Wednesday the 18th. Be sure to book your calendars and come and show support. And our school will be having our holiday recess not shortly enough.
If you haven't been to the holiday concert, you're missing a treat, and seat tickets are at a premium, so get there early.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Brenna. Okay, approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the following minutes of the regular meeting held on November 26th, 2024? Is Robin, seconded by Dennis. All those in favor? That is, yes, you can do it. That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Board committee reports. Any? Sarah, curriculum.
Curriculum committee met last Wednesday, the 4th. The two agenda items, the K-3 literacy update and the geometry class, will be spoken about further tonight.
Okay. Anyone else? Done.
It's not totally facilities, but it's facilities related. We had the tour of the schools on Saturday, December 7th. And thank you to the staff and everyone who showed up. And it was great to see the projects which we have and also see the HHR projects which are very well underway.
Thank you, Dennis. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you all. Presentations, discussions, and possible action. Presentation on the K-3 literacy update, Dr. Pettigan.
Good evening, everyone. Mrs. Droller, Director of Elementary Education, is here with us tonight. As indicated already, we had a robust conversation during our last curriculum committee. I just want to express gratitude once again for the many teachers that have been involved and also the teachers that were with us during the curriculum committee for that conversation. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Droller, and after the presentation, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Good evening, everybody. So this is a high-level follow-up to the curriculum committee meeting, the timeline, which I believe everybody here has seen before. But one thing that I want to point out, a decision will be made by April. The core review team will make recommendations to the district curriculum leadership team, and a recommendation will be made to the board in May. So we have two options on the table, option A and option B. And one of the questions was, what does our core literacy instruction look like in our current DPS program compared to interreading? So these are all of the reading components that are part of interreading, and this is where they exist and what resources we use in our DPS program. We also talked about instructional minutes and how they're being used. So this is a comparison grade by grade for each of those components. This is first grade, and I know that you have this in your packet. There is a range, it depends on day, and a little bit by teacher and how they're using them, how they're teaching each component each day. So that's why you see a range in there, but this is second grade, and this is third grade. We talked about professional learning. We have our professional learning days coming up in January. Literacy consultant and teacher collaboration. We just had all of the interreading grade level teachers met today. We have district-wide grade level meetings, and they share best practice, talk about strengths, talk about some strategies that are working. We have professional learning communities for data analysis and collaborative planning and cross-district classroom visitations. So next steps for us, we are continuing to learn about interreading. As you know, we wanted to extend our pilot and specifically the impact on student learning. We are continuing classroom visitations to observe interreading, word love, and the new writing units of study. So we want our teachers that are implementing those resources to see interreading, and our interreading pilot teachers to see those resources as well. We are going to analyze our January data, including cross-district student writing samples, and provide continued opportunities for teacher collaboration and professional learning. And interreading, we have a trainer coming and an independent literacy consultant that we're working with. So, any questions?
I'll just start by asking if you're planning to recommend to the board in May 2025, what are the backward steps from there? So will you be back at curriculum, in April? Is that, I mean, with some
We continue
semi-regular?
to have curriculum updates every month, and I apologize because I realized that I missed one question that Mr. Gramling asked for, so I'm going to just go back. I apologize for that. You had asked for the estimate in terms of budget for what this would cost in next year's budget and going forward. So just to explain this, what's in yellow is a one-time cost of resources for and option A is on top. So that's a one-time cost that we would incur next year. And then what's highlighted in blue is an annual expense. So those would be student consumables, those would be digital licenses, anything that we would have to pay for each year. So in option A, the $218,620 would be the total expense for K3 interreading. And then in FY27 for K3, that $136,534 would be our projected annual expense. It's a little bit hard to project out that far, but I spoke to our sales rep and that was what we came up with. Option B a compendium, and we included our current program with, if we used pieces of interreading, pieces of what we like. It's hard to say right now which pieces teachers would want to use, but the one-time expense is listed again in yellow, and then that would be an annual expense as a range, because it's very hard to say. It depends on which components they would want. And again, that's projected out to FY '27.
Okay, Joanna.
I have a question for this specifically. In the past, there was, I think we found, in the Title I grant, there was about $100,000 partnership agreement between Teachers College and Darien that was paid every year. Do you know if that's still in effect? Are we still paying that? And since we don't have Title I anymore, where would that come out of?
We are not still paying for that, and we do not have Title I funds anymore. So we just would be providing professional learning based on what we've already submitted in the budget, or what we will be submitting in the budget in January. That's already baked into the professional learning costs.
And that was our choice, to use Teachers College for professional learning, but that's actually not in our budget for next year.
Katie.
Thank you. I don't see this in our packet. Is this included?
It's updated in the.
So we'll get this, or,
It's in the,
Yes.
you go to the one that's on the website, it's in that one.
okay, not.
It
the
was a
one that
link, and we
emailed
said
over.
that it would be
There-
coming
okay.
today.
Just our curriculum committee meeting was on that Thursday, and the board packet, I think, had to go out the next day. So because it was just such a short timeline, we wanted to flag that we were working on those numbers. That's why we kind of put that placeholder there, and now that's live.
Okay, thank you. And then who is the independent consultant that's mentioned on the last slide? I don't remember that from the committee meeting.
So we're working with somebody through our MTSS, Ellen Tuckner, and it has nothing to do with any program. It's really looking at our MTSS as we shift from SRBI to MTSS.
What organization is she?
She's independent. She did do work for the Hill for Literacy. She was a principal. She's a colleague of mine, highly respected. Really, what she's helping us to do is look at our data and ensure that one of our goals is that all of our students are decoding solidly by the end of second grade. So how are we looking across data? And that's some of the work that she's doing with our teams and our teachers.
Thank you. Dennis.
Yes, thank you for the costs. Do you know what we currently pay for reading material, curriculum material?
Not off the
That's
top
a-
of my head, but we can certainly provide
Yeah,
that
we could just have
information.
a delta or
Mhm,
to see
mhm.
what the additional expenses will be.
Mhm. So the fiscal year 27 annual expense, am I to assume that FY 28, FY 29 will have similar costs going forward?
Mhm, yes.
And again, same question, like what is that difference between what is currently happening and?
Agreed. Robin.
Just one note on the grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, where you're showing the instructional minutes. Just one note that I would make is that grade 3 looks like, I was comparing the interreading versus the DPS, the ranges by area. And it would be really helpful if the sum of the maximum ranges would be equal for the interreading versus DPS, because right now the DPS has a range of like 150 minutes and the interreading is like 100 minutes. And so I think it's not really showing apples to apples what they could be doing, for instance, in reading or small group instruction for interreading. So if there's a disparity, so I mean, just to be able to kind of have people look at this and be able to compare options. And I know it's not.
Right.
Not
It's hard to
exact.
do that because it depends on the day. Some days
Right.
might be 30 minutes and some days might be 45, and some things might be 5 out of 6 days a week. So it's really an average. But the
Okay, I
total
guess-
number of minutes is always the same, no
Right,
matter
right.
what, because that's their literacy
If you
block.
go to the first grade slide, for instance, on, if you have a 120-minute reading block, where you look at vocabulary versus writing, foundational skills, the range of those broken down don't add up to 120 minutes. It's like a lot less than that. And so I think it might be it might be kind of making it a little bit look like we are not getting as much, for instance, in reading or small group instruction, when in fact we actually might have 20 to 30 more minutes to get to the 120 minutes. And just to kind of understand kind of what are the differences really, that it's just helpful. I mean, I would think everyone who's looking into this as a decision would be interested in that as well as you work out the scheduling and all the details. But thank you so much for the information. You're welcome.
Sarah. So my biggest takeaway, or one of my biggest takeaways from the comparison charts, was that the interactive read aloud was missing in into reading. And that was something that came out of our conversation. So where does that fall into, I mean, I know that there are read alouds in classrooms, but where does that fall into reading?
So in into reading, it's part of the reading because
Okay.
it's part of, that is what their reading is. They call it shared reading.
Okay.
But it's a read aloud. All the children have the book in front of them, so they call it shared reading.
So that's encompassed in the reading small
Yeah.
groups. Okay.
Mhm.
Greg.
Thanks for pulling together the expense breakout. Two follow-ups on that. One was, I think when we discussed it, this is like the first step. There would also be a secondary evaluation of what grades 4 through 8 or 4 through 5.
4 through 5 next, and then our steering committee is looking at like pre-K through 12 literacy.
Okay, so I think it would also be helpful to just see what, like, if that's in 2027 or beyond, what the incremental cost there might be.
So in, depending on where we go with this, the 4th and 5th will pilot either the program or some components, but there generally is not a cost for that.
Oh,
So
there's nothing incremental.
no, I mean, for the pilot, I'm going to assume because this year.
I mean, like
pilot
if we, so I mean, I sort of assume if we're gonna take on into reading for this grade, and then we're gonna pilot it, the going assumption in my mind is we would also end up taking it on for the other grades, so then there would be cost in the future for that.
So I think that's still to be determined. The legislation is K3.
Okay.
So I think we would really have to dig into that and see.
Okay. And then you made a comment about the annual expense being driven much by digital stuff.
Digitals and consumables.
Okay. I was just gonna say, is there a non-digital option that's
Both,
available?
it's both.
Okay.
It's both.
Katie.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out a couple of facts, since we're here at the full table, that I would definitely encourage anyone who hasn't had an opportunity to go back and see the curriculum meeting. We did have a panel of wonderful teachers who are piloting, and it's always great to hear directly from the people that are implementing this, as well as the materials were a bit more robust in terms of the surveys and those things taken. A couple of next steps as well that the committee had questions about were about the new units of study, about word love, assessments, and then I think the plan for PD as well. So those are just all, I think, some components that are important for us to mention at this phase as well.
And we thought that we would bring that back to the curriculum committee.
And I would anticipate that January curriculum committee, there would likely also be teachers who are also using those materials who can talk about their firsthand experience implementing in the classroom.
Joanna.
I just wanted to sort of take a step back and do more of a big picture look at it. I know we have numbers in front of us, just some things cost more than others, or some things cost more, time of teachers and professional development. But I really feel like it's imperative if the board remembers that we are, whatever change we move forward with, it does relate to special education and student services. We can really connect the dots from K3 literacy all the way through to our SES outplacement costs. You start with the kid who's dyslexic, gets pulled out for specialized learning in first grade, but she goes back to the classroom and they're only using units of study. And that's sort of like the opposite of what they'd be learning with their explicit and direct reading instruction. And so then if you think about that child, you follow him through elementary school, after a while it just gets frustrating. You're sitting in class, maybe they get their self-esteem starts to go down, they start to be dysregulated. Suddenly you're calling more PPTs because they need more support in the classroom. And I think that if we keep in mind that moving towards these science of reading programs and allowing our teachers to use them like they so interestingly explained at the curriculum meeting the other day, you know, we could maybe smooth it out. And then the kid who goes out and gets the specialized services comes back in the classroom and it's, you know, reinforced. It's a different lesson, but it's still the same overall method. I think, you know, that is something to keep in mind.
Thank you. All right.
Madam Chair, I just, I just want to recognize people's work and the board's work on this because you've entered into a thoughtful, deliberate, comprehensive process that I think is actually being respected by the state. There are other districts that, for whatever reason, they want to do things or not do things, but you should feel at least very comfortable in the process that our staff has been going through and that the board has been going through. So, just one note.
Thank you for that. Okay, thank you for the questions and the presentation. We'll move on to discussion and possible action on geometry.
Thanks, Julie.
Tonight, again, we had a robust conversation as well at the curriculum committee meeting. We're joined tonight by Ronnie Rodier, our 612 mathematics department chair. So she'll provide a high level, I guess, description of what we discussed during the curriculum committee meeting. And I think there was one follow-up as well requested. So hopefully we've addressed what was requested of us during that time. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Ronnie.
Good evening. Thank you for your time, members of the board, this evening. So we discussed a proposal to update the designation of accelerated geometry to honors geometry, a change that aligns with our goals of consistency, equity, and preparing students for future academic success. If you'd like a little sneak peek in geometry, here we go. This was last week.
Did you guys plan out all these steps before doing them? Yeah. I don't know, it's a lot. Is this proof you consider medium, hard, easy? Yes, I think so. I do like the holiday colors.
That was accelerated geometry from last week. To give you a brief overview of the timeline for geometry at Darien High School, accelerated geometry was adopted in 1996, and then course placement criteria was adjusted in 2014. By 2017, we were only one of two in the DIRG not offering honors geometry. In 2022, 70% of students qualified for accelerated geometry, but only 34% enrolled. Currently, we have 180 students this year that qualified to take accelerated geometry and only 79 enrolled. And this could be attributed to several factors. Students seeking balance in their academic load, varying levels of passion for math as they enter the high school, but the majority is the lack of honors credit and recognition for the course. So this proposal is a part of a broader effort to align our courses across the district. Similar updates have already been approved for English 9 and are planned for Western Civ and French 2 in the future, as you can see in 2027. So our proposal is straightforward. It's to change the designation of accelerated geometry to honors geometry starting in the 2025-2026 school year. And this change promotes consistency across the subject areas, and mirrors the approach that was taken with honors biology and honors English for freshmen, and acknowledges the rigorous nature of the course. This proposal has been a collaborative effort involving multiple stakeholders across the district. In October of 2023, district leaders, the DHS administrative team, and department chairs met to discuss and approve a plan to address accelerated courses. This collaboration laid the groundwork for the proposal, and in April of 2024, Accelerated English was officially renamed Honors English. At the middle school level, in December of 2023, leadership met with the math department staff and administrators to discuss the proposed changes and their implications for the prerequisites needed in algebra classes in the 8th grade. Since October of 2023, DHS leadership has worked consistently with the math department, school counselors, and the principals to share updates on progression plans, curriculum changes, and upcoming parent communications. This proposal does have broad support from teachers at both the middle and the high school levels and has been endorsed by the Darien High School Curriculum Council. As we discussed in our first curriculum committee meeting of the year, our primary resource for Middlesex is expiring and will require renewal. This renewal is not just about replacing a resource, it's about strengthening the core of our curriculum to lay a solid foundation for students' mathematical discipline practices, ensuring their success in future math courses. In all our curriculum work, we remain focused on a 612 articulation, carefully planning to create a cohesive learning experience that supports our high standards and long-term goals. Honors Geometry will offer more depth and breadth compared to the current accelerated course. The curriculum will include additional units, faster pacing, and more complex problem solving, while also fostering greater independence through no calculator sections. It's important to note that these changes will closely mirror what we currently are doing in accelerated geometry in the 8th grade for our most advanced mathematicians in the district. This alignment ensures consistency and rigor and high expectations across all levels. Eligibility for honors geometry will be determined by using multiple data points to ensure that we identify students prepared for the increased rigor. These include grades, teacher recommendations, standardized test scores, and exam performance. A waiver option will be available for students who may not meet all the criteria, but demonstrate readiness through other means. And this waiver process is not going to change. It's the one we have in place. So in summary, this proposal strengthens our curriculum, aligns with the other honors level courses, and equips our students with the skills needed for academic success. Importantly, I should mention it does not alter any of the pathways currently in place for students at the high school level. All existing progression options will remain intact, ensuring that students can continue to pursue their individual and academic goals. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is on for board action this evening. If we're ready to go, we can take a vote on it. If not, we could certainly do a second read. We'll see what the questions turn up, but it is up for action. Sarah, did the committee have a recommendation?
Yes, the committee unanimously approved that going forward, this was the right choice to make.
Okay.
And as anecdotally, I had the pleasure of sitting in the senior law and gov class today talking about Board of Education work and kind of said we were talking about this and they were incredibly enthusiastic about it. And many of them said, oh, if that had been the case, I would have taken that course. So
Thank you. Okay. Any questions about the presentation? No? Thank you. Thank you to the curriculum committee for going
Thank
through.
you.
Yes. So with that, may I have a motion to approve the geometry course leveling? That's Greg, seconded by Dave. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, board.
Happy holidays. Okay. Presentation on the Teen Talk update, Amy and Alicia.
Okay, and tonight, in addition to Dr. Dad, we're joined by Kate Demoulas, middle school principal, and I'm going to turn it over to them. Welcome to you both.
Great, thank you. We appreciate the time to be able to come here and speak a little bit more about Teen Talk. We know it's a newer program at the high school, at the middle school, and it's been at the high school for a year. So just in general, a little bit of background in terms of the purpose and why we ended up kind of pursuing Teen Talk. It really does align with our goals around promoting wellness and diversity and inclusion and just a culture that supports our students as a whole person, including their mental health. So Teen Talk is unique in that it provides confidential counseling. So while they are in our school buildings, they're not employed by the district. We work collaboratively with them, but it's also an opportunity for students and parents to seek out some support that's not directly connected with their academic counselor They also have more availability to meet with parents and students after school hours. They can meet with parents if there's any apprehension to meet with a mental health professional in the school building. They can actually meet with them out in the community with the goal ultimately of being able to provide whatever support is needed. Also, it's about promoting healthy choices, emotional well-being. So as much as they do a lot of crisis management, it's also preventative and proactive strategies to help students be more effective. Healthy choices relate also to, avoiding substances, technology use, social issues. We see a lot of intervention around peer conflict. And as I mentioned, they're available 24/7. So there is a crisis hotline where at any point a student or a parent can reach out for support. So just for context in terms of where we kind of ended up with Teen Talk, it was an initial consideration after the tragedies of the spring of 2022. Having lost a couple high school students, we really took a look at what would be most effective in supporting as many students as possible. So as you've seen before, this is data directly from our kids within our community, grades 6 through 12. So on average, we saw about 20% of high schoolers and 25% of high schoolers and 20% of middle schoolers report persistent symptoms of sadness and hopelessness in the past year. And the same with anxiety. And this was not just a little bit of sadness or a little bit of anxiety. Additional data from that survey also indicated that we had 9% of our students, or 163 students, that reported seriously considering taking their own life. Which is staggering. And that 46% of them, about 3%, had an attempt to actually end their life. So really understanding the severity in which our kids were struggling. So we continue to look at data like the Darien Youth Survey, school climate data, and then the data that actually comes directly from Teen Talk as we plan for next steps. So again, it's a licensed mental health provider that's available to students. They're mandated DCF, they're clinical social workers. They have additional training in assessing high-risk behavior and crises. There's also that confidential support system. The Teen Talk counselors not only collaborate with our team, but they receive additional supervision and professional development through Kids in Crisis. So Kids in Crisis, Teen Talk is part of Kids in Crisis. Kids in Crisis offers a wide range of services, including an emergency shelter. So if a family or a student is in crisis from birth to high school, they have an opportunity to go there and get additional clinical support with the goal of family reunification. There's, a structured setting where they receive therapy while they're there. The goal is family reunification. There's also crisis services. So oftentimes what will happen is it can be difficult for individuals who are in crisis to link with ongoing support. So Kids in Crisis can help facilitate those students and families that reach out to additional ongoing clinical support. There's also Safe Talk, which is an elementary program where Kids in Crisis will come in if you are part of their program, and they will deliver lessons to elementary level students around things like bullying and making safe choices. There's also Safe Place, which they work with Lighthouse, where they're able to provide peer-to-peer counseling in Darien. It's actually at the depot for the LGBTQ community. So what's currently going on this year with our Teen Talk counselors? So Carla Greta is the Teen Talk counselor at the middle school. She just started at the end of August, the beginning of this year. So far, she's presented at the Thriving Youth Group kind of in terms of what she's doing to support our children. I think one of the major things that we were seeing is that she conducted 13 safety assessments. So these are kids who were either reporting, most of them, a risk to themselves or to someone else. She's also gone to all of the flex classes to introduce herself to students. And just last week, we had a coffee where she really kind of, with a panel, described the services that are available to the students and the families. Ashley Lopez started last year, so we have a little bit more data because she was here for the entire year. And she's been able to really jump in. One of the wonderful things about the Teen Talk counselors is that they tend to have more flexibility in their day to be able to respond immediately to crises. So last year we were able to utilize Ashley when there was a student loss in one of the programs at the high school, and also when there was a loss of a former staff member, she was able to go to the middle school and support the staff who were struggling. She called in another Teen Talk counselor from Greenwich because we realized that that staff member had impact at the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school, so that they could kind of disperse throughout the district to provide additional support where needed. She has also facilitated programming in the Wellness Center around finding your passion and doing some workshops around that. Again, she was supportive when we had a tragedy in our neighboring district of New Canaan, and we really tried to pull targeted groups together to provide additional support around bereavement and crisis counseling. She really was available to them. So just some data. In terms of the services last year, overall, Ashley worked with 55 students, 578 sessions, a lot of community meetings. You can see all these 22% of the students accessing services were from traditionally underrepresented ethnic groups, which is also correlates with the data that we got from the Thriving Youth Survey, is that they tend to experience a higher level of anxiety and depression. So as part of Teen Talk, they aggregate data using the Ohio scales, which is a student self-report of functioning. And really what they saw was there was almost a 28% improvement in the severity of the problem. So the students really noticed a significant difference. Overall functioning scores improved by 6%. And that was in part due to the skills that they developed, which are listed on the right. Things from healthy coping, social decision-making, and overall 100% of the students who engaged with the counselor were extremely to moderately satisfied. Great. So one of the areas that they also screen for is related to substances, tobacco, alcohol, and marijuana. So she screened 35 students. The idea is that you screen, you provide brief intervention, and you refer to treatment. And this is important because some of the funding has come through the town of Darien Department of Health with regards to opioid and substance use prevention. So for this year, in terms of the services that's been delivered at the high school, again, you'll see case consultations. Even though the Teen Talk counselors are separate from the school staff, they really do work together. We hear often that sometimes they need additional support beyond their counselor. Maybe it's the availability of the counselor in the moment. Also home visits, which can be challenging to schedule for our own staff who may have scheduled meetings, or other responsibilities. And 27 parent guardian meetings, phone and email support. Like I said, I think that's important. My kid's struggling. I don't necessarily, we want to avoid any barriers that might inhibit a parent from reaching out for support. So anything that makes them feel more comfortable, and they are reaching out to her. In Middlesex, I'm going to turn it over to you. All right, you can speak a little bit about that.
Of course. Thank you. So as Alicia said, Carla has recently started at Middlesex this year, and in her short time with us so far, beyond these numbers, I will say she has developed really strong professional relationships with the team members and mental health staff at Middlesex, who have spoken very highly of how valuable they find her as a member to our team. These numbers do show that she has been heavily involved in some of the risk assessments that we have had so far this year. I would note that since this data was put together for December 4th, we are now up to 18 risk assessments. So that is something that continues to increase, and where we do see a real need to make sure that we have the staffing to support those as they arise. I also would note that in contrast to the data presented by or for the high school, our number of informal interactions is on the lower side. However, we would expect that that number would continue to go up as she establishes relationships with students in the building and has had more time with our students, the same way that Ms. Lopez has had at the high school, and that we have a different structure to our schedule than the high school, where students do have more unstructured time at the high school, where they can pop by during a free period on their way to lunch, so that there's a little bit of a shift there. And I also want to highlight, as Alicia said, that we had that recent MPA parent coffee with Dr. Dad and Ms. Oster, Casey Westcott, and Carla. That was well attended and well received. We've summarized the presenting issues across both the middle school and the high school, and you can see that at both levels, we do have our Teen Talk counselors working with our students on school-related issues and family-related issues. But beyond that, there are some significant differences in the type of work that they're doing with our students. At the middle school level, we do have higher involvement, as I mentioned, in crisis and safety response, as well as in peer issues. Whereas at the high school level, Ms. Lopez is working more closely with students on anxiety, depression, grief, and substance use. Alicia taught me that one of the reasons we might expect the data to look like that is because it's developmentally common for middle schoolers to be more externalizing in their behaviors related to mental health issues and challenges than it is for high schoolers who would be more likely to be internalizing. And so that is part of what the reflection there is. We also might consider that some of the difference there reflects the increased number of informal check-ins that Ms. Lopez has had so far this year, whereas much of the time for Carla has been spent in those risk assessments and collaborating on those. So we think about the increased needs that we're having at Middlesex Middle School and why it's important to us that we continue to advocate for this position in our budget proposal for the upcoming year. Again, we had said as of December 4th that we were at 16 risk assessments so far this year, and that's actually up to 23 as of right now. Of those, Ms. Greto has been involved in 9 of the 16 or 11 of the 23. That represents an increase of 10 risk assessments for the same period of time since last year. So it was 3 as of December 4th. We're up to 10 as of today. We note also that when we look ahead to the next 2 incoming classes, that we are thinking about our students who are in a different space of the COVID bubble, our kindergartners and first graders who will be coming up to us in 6th and the following 6th grade. We also know that next year's class is larger than our current classes and has a higher number of students who receive special education services. So we think about the variety of needs that we will see in our building in several ways and continue to think that because of those needs and because of what we're seeing in our building right now, our Teen Talk counselor really provides a very important set of services to our students and to our families. She has flexibility to respond to crisis in a way that our other professionals do not, because she isn't usually scheduled for PPTs or 504 meetings or testing or mandated counseling through those documents or programs. So she has the flexibility to shift her day to the immediate crisis in a way that another service provider might need to postpone a student's service or not be able to attend to that. They might miss a meeting. So that allows us to have more timely and response while meeting the needs of all of our students at the same time. It also provides an opportunity to provide parent support and education, which is developmentally appropriate for our middle schoolers. And as Alicia had said, that does offer parents the opportunity to reach out to someone who is connected to the school, but not a school-based employee in the same way, so that there can be a little bit more confidentiality there when parents feel that they need that for themselves and their families. Currently, we also have Carla providing some extra support in our AIM program through behavioral coaching, as well as giving opportunity for real-time intervention for social situations, whether those are in the cafeteria, in recess, study hall, really general education, tier 1 level supports for our students. And she's also been integral in supporting our students and families with school refusal. Next steps.
So next steps in looking ahead, actually, this just happened on Friday and Monday. We had comprehensive school threat assessment training, which allows the school team to operate cohesively whenever there is a threat. Both Teen Talk counselors participated in that, again, speaking to their ability to be integrated and responsive in the moment. They will complete their DBT training by January. And as we have heard tonight, even this idea of multi-tiered student support systems and intervening earlier when there are problems emerging. They have that flexibility to do more universal intervention, whether that's pushing into classes and doing mini lessons. We've talked about work in flex periods and running groups. This came up just recently, as Kate mentioned. We know that this class that's coming in is kind of the COVID bubble. So there's an opportunity to run groups with transition into middle school, and Ms. Greto has ran a middle school girls confidence group, which I think is something that we often hear about is, in particular girls, and whether it's social media or interpersonal drama, there's definitely a need there. Additional parenting programs. I think Thursday's coffee highlighted some areas that parents, I think, would like to have more conversation about, whether it was regards to technology. Teen Talk is launching next year a 24/7 crisis texting line. We know that kids are sometimes more often to text than pick up the phone. So again, we're looking at what might be barriers and how we reduce those, and continued grant submissions. So submitted a grant last night, and we have another one kind of on the horizon that may be applicable. So this past year, the entire cost of Teen Talk was absorbed by 30,000 was through an initial grant through the community fund. I know Janet King presented last year and worked really hard to help support Teen Talk, and they do in other communities as well. The other 30,000 that came from the community fund was from a direct campaign to the community. And one of the things that I think is important to note is they said that in 10 days, they raised $30,000, and it was not one single donor, but a lot of community members and families that valued this and contributed to the campaign. The other $40,000 came from the Darien Department of Health. So there is opioid settlements, and right now those settlements are expected to go on for approximately 18 years. So one of the areas in which that allocation can be funded towards is to prevention work, including mental health and substance screening. So that aligns with the SBIRT scales that they do as part of their assessment. And so this is the budget that Teen Talk breaks down in terms of the cost per counselor. Obviously, it includes salary, crisis on call, things that we all know about with health insurance and pension. So for next year, the cost is $107,950. So proposed funding for next year, the high school counselor is already included in the proposed budget for DHS. So when we think about the original cost of $107,000, we've applied yesterday, actually was the deadline for the community fund grant. So we asked for funding through them. In addition, I've had some conversations, as has Teen Talk, with the Department of Health. It's been somewhat unique in that in the past month, there was a new president hired for the community fund. So she's just started. We've been in contact. She was there Thursday. And at the Department of Health, we know David Naff, who originally kind of put forth the $40,000, has retired, but there's someone else that we've been talking to, Mindy, who assumed that position. So the recommendation that we've discussed is securing 50% of funding through these private and public agencies, and then the other 50% through the Board of Ed budget. That's not to say, I mean, we've applied for $50,000 through the community fund, and it's a variable. We don't know how much we may get from either one of those entities, but that is where we are. Okay.
So you just may have noticed a couple of things. One, it said 100,000, then it said 107,000. Originally was 107,000, and we've since been able to get it settled at the 100,000. That's the mark. And the opioid grant, there's an understanding that we had the grant, but it wasn't necessarily to go forward. There was no guarantee it was going to go forward. It looks like we've secured that grant for next year, but it wouldn't be a guarantee that going down the future years that would be, even though it's up for consideration for how the town wants to use it, but there's no guarantee that it would be used for this purpose.
Yes, I can confirm that. So this is just on for presentation tonight, so we understand the components of the program. And it should appear in the budget, which appears very likely. So we would understand how it's structured. I did speak to Maggie Domont at the Community Fund. And so, yes, there were, as Alicia said, there were two components of the types of grant we got from them last year. There is no intent to do the direct appeal again. We're just going through their standard grant process, which is granted in June. I think that, provided that their fundraising goals come in as one would hope or expect, they certainly intend to support the program. Similarly, I spoke to John Sokratsky, and he similarly is interested in some level of support for the program. Both organizations indicated, just as Alan has just said, that they are looking for the board longer term to be considering taking on our own funding, because if it's a program that we believe in, that they would be looking to us to give it a more stable funding source than relying on grants. So with that, I'll open it to questions. Robin.
Just one question on the Middlesex, the risk and safety assessment. So you're saying that we have had 23 just in the first 4 months of this year, which is up 10 versus last year. What are you attributing that to? Because that's a concerning kind of statistic, considering Darien High School, I believe, had basically 0 during that same time frame. Or any, I know that this is confidential, but I mean, just broadly, it would be helpful to know.
Yes, and I would be reluctant to jump to too many conclusions about what that pattern, if that's a pattern and what it tells us, I think it is noteworthy to say that it does show us something about what we are seeing from our students when we look at the really global context of, we know that middle schoolers externalize their behaviors. And so when Alicia was sharing with me data from other schools that have teen talk counselors, that is generally the case, that they're more frequently involved in crisis response at the middle school level than at the high school level. Sorry, still trying to not get y'all sick. That they are more likely to be involved in crisis response at the middle school level than the high school level generally. So that is consistent with other schools. We also know when we get a little more narrow into our own set of data that, as you had said in the Thriving Youth Survey, 46 of our students reported that they had had an attempt in the past year. So these students are in our school and they are reaching out for help.
That was 46 at the middle school?
Is that right? Cross. That was across, right? So 9% of students at the middle school had indicated that they had had serious consideration. So we know we have these students in our building and they are reaching out for help.
Thank you.
And I think just to add to that, so it was, if we took the exact time frame, it was 3 more, but then this past week, there's been, which is not uncommon going into things like holidays and stressful situations where you get a bubble or you see behavior start to emerge a little bit more. So it's an increase. It's not 10, it's 3, but it still speaks to what a lot of time is being.
I did go back to last year's data.
Yeah.
And so it is 10 as of today when I looked at it over speed.
Thank you.
Brenna and then Dennis.
I think that this data, while very alarming, really underscores the value of our teen talk counselors, especially at the middle school level. And I think it's important, as we're diving into addressing those causes again, to like preserve these folks. And I also just wanted to emphasize one really important point that I don't want us to gloss over, and is that these people are available probably the most out of all of our professionals who work with us in our school community, because I'm sure Dr. Klein knows something about this. The PPT meetings really can run out the wazoo and take up someone's entire schedule. And then you have a familiar face like Dr. Dad, or even at the middle school, or not Dr. Dad.
You've seen me a lot here.
Who can help you in times of need. And so I really would just like us to consider that.
Thank you very much. Dennis.
So I don't know whether to thank you or not for the data and the information. I think you've proven your point beyond any reasonable doubt of what we need to do. And it's super concerning, but what's nagging at me is that 20% of 6th graders have anxiety, and so how you have the line in here, support systems to address behavior and emotional needs earlier on. What exactly does that mean? And I realize I'm asking for the Holy Grail, and maybe the cell phone ban can help and things like that. But what else can we do? Because this is super helpful, and I don't mean to demean it, but it's also a Band-Aid on a problem, which is a gaping wound. So how do we fix the wound? Holy Grail, I know.
You can go ahead.
Well, I don't have that answer. But I did want to say that you heard Julie Droller earlier tonight reference the MTSS work that the district is doing. I know that Kathy Oster has been having conversations with the counselors 612 and aligning and working towards, we discussed in our budget proposal that I've shared with cabinet, looking at possibly the flex curriculum and school counseling curriculum at the middle school. And so all of those pieces are part of a much larger puzzle. We think about the transition from our K-5 levels up to our middle school and continuing to work on the transition and alignment, as Ronnie was saying, between the middle school and the high school, so that everything that we can do systemically to reduce those challenges for our students is being considered, I think, and that also has to happen in partnership, and it is happening in partnership with our parents and with our community.
Just to add to that, I think when you look at one of the single most important factors of resilience, it is adult-student connection. So I think the more we value and prioritize creating a culture and community of connectedness and how we impact one another, I think there's a lot of research to show that's really adaptive. There's also a lot of research to show that when kids feel connected to their teachers and teachers feel connected to their students, that students perform better and teachers perform better. So I think that sometimes we think that we're giving one thing up for another, when in reality, when we kind of take time to develop those relationships, the return on investment is not only academics, but it's also social emotional connection and resilience. So I think that's why I really do think when we talk about creating that sense of resilience, it's important. I could go on, but
Anything else? Shirley, did you want to talk?
This is Amy's mic, I'm sorry. No, I just wanted to ask Alicia also, and just to add to Mr. Maroney's question, the professional learning we do for psychologists.
yes.
The work we're doing, DBT training for our school counselors, some of our specialty instructors in our programs, and we just want to add to that.
Yes, I think, we did get that school mental health grant, the summer mental health grant. So we've actually been training teachers and being able to, through that grant, pay them to come in over the summer and learn different skills so that they can address some of the emotions and behaviors in the classroom and keep progressing. So I think that giving our staff the tools and the psychologists, the social workers, continuing to get really evidence-based intervention strategies is really helpful.
Okay. Katie.
Thank you very much for this presentation, and I appreciate the conversation around the interconnectedness as well. I think that it's well timed with the presentation that we just had on the curriculum, and I would certainly urge the board to keep that in mind as we talk about initiatives, as we talk about curriculum, and to Joanna's point from earlier, that what we do really does have a ripple effect, and everything that goes into or out of general education does affect special education, which can be academic and can also be emotional. Lastly, I would just say that I was fortunate, along with Joanna, to attend Thursday's presentation, which was truly incredible. And should there be another one anytime soon, I would encourage everyone to go, to be able to hear again directly from the counselors, to hear even from the scaffolding up, the way that Kathy Oster, our director of guidance, was talking about the kind of check-ins and assessments that she had done in order to assess how the program was working in its infancy, really. I wouldn't even try to restate, like it was really very powerful to hear the just overwhelming positive aspect. And I think the thing that struck me even so much, having not had that kind of direct conversation, was how much we do not have something else like this in our district. While we have wonderful professionals who have a range of credentials and abilities, they are tied to being district employees and district timelines and meetings and those things. And I was really quite impressed by the different capacity in which these counselors are able to serve. Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to mention to the board, actually, this program itself came from actually a board member, a prior board member at the table over the years, and I appreciate the recommendation that was made at the time. And this was part of sort of a three-pronged approach at the middle school for this year, which was deliberately designed to provide middle school kids with actual support through administrative support, interventions for kids, and mental health support for the kids. That's a huge goal. They're growing up with significant needs. It's been apparent for a couple of years that there were the needs there, and I appreciate the board and the community supporting these initiatives that particularly for this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here this evening. Discussion and possible action on communication plan. Alan and Marge.
So this is, before I forget, I just want to recognize Ms. Philpott, our assistant, because she put this together and worked on it. This is a combination of nearly 2 years' work, believe it or not. So one of the charges from the Communications Committee was to put together a communications plan. We've involved parents, faculty members. We've done focus groups, surveys. The committee itself has also sort of looked at that data, reviewed it, analyzed it, and come up with what we have before us tonight. I also want to recognize Julie. Julie Best has been the committee chair to this particular point, and all the members who have been part of the committee. I want to thank them also. So I'll just talk at a high level, and it ended up to being a wee bit more than actually we were anticipating. So it sort of developed into a full plan. We originally considered a plan. We were thinking really of just what really would have been just some sort of information as opposed to a sort of process that we have here. And I'll just talk real quickly. I'm not going to go into an awful lot of detail. You've got the introduction, purpose, and principles. Those, they discuss long and hard about what those were. Some of this has been passed on to the policy committee, and some of those purposes and principles have been distilled from and aggregated from the focus groups and all the feedback that we receive. The communication tools just talks to you about some of the things that we actually use. You've got the Board of Education goal on page 5. You basically research on best practices and what that says about communications. The Communication Committee looked at all of this, actually had working committee meetings about it. So, for instance, on this page, we added in number 4, timeliness of communications and what research said about that. So there's the key findings there. Current engagement just tells you some things about the data from our Zoom meetings, how we use School Messenger, how we use YouTube for our committee or for the board meetings. We're probably at an infancy of collecting the data, right? You can see there's a wee window of a time frame here, but now we're just going to collect it on an ongoing process. You can see some of the parent and community feedback. What did it all say? I'm not going to read this to you, but you can see it's reflected in actually the plan itself moving forward. So then the strategies. So you had the staff, you had the community. The visual identity, of course, we have now our new logos, thanks to Annika, did a wonderful job on that. And that was originally part of the strategic plan for just to have a media set ready. Originally, when we were starting out at page 12, this was kind of the sort of like perhaps what we considered what would be the communications plan. In essence, it's blossomed into a full plan. This will be pulled out and put on the website, but also as a communication tool in a readable fashion, just point size. But this gives our current modes of communication, the type of communication, and how people can access it or subscribe to it. You have the chain of communication that has been updated for all new staff. That's common to most people, and it's updated on the website. So where did these strategies come from? They came from all the data that was provided through the focus groups and the surveys. So I won't read these to you, but you can see they were distilled into 5. I think we collapsed one. The committee actually collapsed one. There were 6 of them, and they collapsed them into 5. And so there's the various strategies now have actions to go under the strategies to accomplish them. I want to thank the members of the committee because they help try to reduce the workload a little bit and also reduce redundancy in some of these strategies. But I won't go through them all. You can sort of you get a wee sense of kind of how it is structured. And we've tried to do some sort of evaluation criteria, albeit we hadn't set metric numbers with them, but at least we have categories there that we would like to start to assess ourselves with regarding feedback. That's a high level walkthrough, and members of the committee who are here can certainly comment on it. Marge or anyone else.
I think the first question around this is how we're going to operationalize it, to take this pretty document and make it something that we actually use and monitor. So
This actually is in the strategic plan, goal 5, number 1A, or it's right there at the top. It talks about this here, completing this process and implementing the recommendations. I do appreciate the board's understanding of the work that's entailed going forward with this, and the committee was sensitive to that, and I appreciate that. But the reality is I don't have any more staff, and the reality is that's going to that most of this work is going to lie with my cabinet or other central services staff. Essentially, it's in the strategic plan, so you'll be getting reports back on it the way you do on the other aspects of the plan. The diversity plan, if you recall, was implemented into and infused into the actual strategic plan itself. For the most part, this would take something of the same sort of description, but we rarely have a document that we don't adhere to or the board doesn't monitor. So we're very conscious of that. Although I would still say, like, I just need a wee bit of understanding that just like we've just established another set of work to do. But that, so we'll just have to sort of manage how we do it, manage the workload going forward. But the committee completed this task. I think it's been worthwhile, and we've engaged the community in honest feedback, and that hopefully engenders trust along the way, and cooperation and participation.
board questions?
Jill?
Yes.
So based on the comment of, I understand your time and staffing is finite. So I'm just looking at strategy 2, which is, there's a lot of great, town halls and brown bag meetings and summaries of board meetings and that kind of thing. Has the committee suggested prioritizing any of that? If there's a finite resource amount, whether that's staffing, money, whatever, is there something that the committee talked about, this is what we think we need to do first, second, third?
I can answer that, or anybody on the committee can answer it. There was no prioritization of.
Okay.
I think I would honestly just take this with my staff and look at, okay, what makes sense to go where and when.
Okay.
I mean, some of the stuff we're doing anyway, like some of it we are doing, right? So it's not like we've been working for 2 years in communication, so it's not as if we're starting from scratch.
Can I just add, Sarah, that was definitely something that we talked about, and we did remove on strategy 2, there used to be 10 items, now there are 8. So we're many of these actions we are already doing, and the district is already doing. There was one item just about that had to do more with the Board of Education, specifically, and I don't remember where this was exactly. I think it was about summarizing our meetings that we did have some questions about. Because that would be time intensive, and actually Jill just mentioned to me that I guess another organization uses AI to do that with a
79.
timestamp, which might be an interesting way to do something at least.
Marge, you just got out of something.
But I absolutely agree. We need to be very careful because we have limited resources.
Yeah.
So.
Katie. Thank you. When reading through this, I had similar questions as well. And I think, it could be helpful in the sort of next discussion for us to have a little bit of comparison and metric in just, what measures do we currently have the resources to implement? What are we already doing? What measures will require new or maybe even reallocated measures? And I think it would be helpful to also understand what are some immediate next steps, and maybe also what, kind of the low hanging fruit, so to speak, is that we can achieve. this it seems pretty comprehensive. There's a lot in here. Some things certainly do seem like they probably need a little more refining or definition to them. So it would be helpful to say, these are core things that we've been doing all along. These are kind of, like essentially that tiering model that we talk about in that prioritization. I definitely have questions about what a town hall looks like, what is meant by some of the feedback, in terms of like board engagement versus like, how does that work in terms of the number of people that would attend, it doesn't become a meeting versus, what is kind of a spokesperson component to that. So I appreciate the work that was done, and especially appreciate that constant reminder about, what our job is and the operational component of administration. But it would be nice to have it broken into kind of the existing and the potential future.
Dennis?
No, in this plan, there was the consideration of a half FTE communications coordinator position, which I realize in this budget's difficulty probably will not be a high priority. But having said that, I do think that this feels like a John Wooden moment, that if you don't have time to do something right the first time, when are you gonna have time to do it right this again? So it just feels like it's a chicken and the egg kind of thing, where we're going to be battling communication issues unless we fund the position, or we're going to be having to put out fires because we don't have a communication person to do this work. And again, I want to applaud the administration for all the work that they do and have done, and also doing this document. But it's something I think we're going to have to look hard at. Maybe I live in too much of an optimist, but I think the more communicating and better communicating we can do, a lot less headache will come back to us later.
What's that?
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I wanted to just point out, and I'm not sure I found it in this document, when we expanded the use of subcommittees, I think it achieves a lot of the goals that are outlined in the document. And maybe perhaps we can better highlight our subcommittee meetings. But, as Sarah and others mentioned, that curriculum meeting last week or 2 weeks ago was a great view into some of the literacy programs that are options we're using for that program. So, I think we can do a better job of highlighting that. And from a town hall perspective, I don't want to get caught up in the details, but I know it's possible from a legal and a FOIA, a public meeting standpoint, to avoid some of the pitfalls of FOIA and that sort of thing. But I think, that town hall doesn't require a lot of resources, maybe a little more time from administration, a little more time from a handful of board members. But the one we had in Oxford, I thought was quite effective in addressing certain hot button topics. I think we can strive to do that, more frequently, not just in a urgent situation like the Oxford principal situation.
Thank you, John. I think what I'm hearing is basically what we need to do is take a look at this document again, kind of as you mentioned, Alan, like you did with the diversity document, and take a look at what is low-hanging fruit, what is achievable based on the resources that we have, what's a high priority in terms of what we want to accomplish. So probably if you and your staff, which it sounds like is your plan already, assuming we pass this more or less as presented, then you and your staff would operationalize it probably through the strat plan, et cetera.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And our Board of Ed communication goal and the strategic plan goal will be two places to indicate what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what we're considering success. Okay. I think there was one comment from the communications committee that was just an edit, either to take out CDSP as a communication tool or add in the other parent groups, simply because we don't control communication from that organization. I understand that they communicate to parents and that there is some of the PTOs do, for example, include principal. I'm on page 13.
Oh, right, I guess. So at the time, I had left that in consciously for that particular purpose of discussion.
Okay.
So on page 13, the CVSP is on there, I think. Yep, that's still on the, are you saying that, are you alluding to that the committee said to take it off?
I think that someone else in the committee can comment, but my understanding of the conversation was that we tried to stick to that you were going to create another list of sort of tangential. Yes, Greg.
Yeah, the idea was that there are a bunch of different forms of communications that the board or the Darien Public School System has with parents, with the
Yes.
community. And I think we talked about how PTOs and the CDSP are not technically part of our group or part of the Darien Public School System. They're kind of separate bodies where they're forming their own communications. Sometimes they take things that we put out into the community and they make adjustments to those and they form their own presentation of what those communications look like. But I think what we talked about was putting that group into a separate bucket, so to speak, to make it clear that that's not necessarily our communication that we can control versus theirs.
So just the organize, like, where does that bucket go? And like,
I see it
have
as
a lot
being
of,
partnership, right? Like, I think that's the difference. Most under this list that you've put together, Alan, these are things that the district is either invested in some way, right? Even the athletics, like I read that one carefully to make sure I was understanding that as our athletic department versus an
Correct.
external,
Correct.
which it is, right? And, something like Pick My Kid, that is a district sponsor. We chose that. We have a whole host of partners that we're so fortunate to work
Yes.
with, like CDSP, like the depot, like the community fund, right? But they don't control us, we don't control them to the point. So I think the partnership is separate than the tools that we pay for and employ.
I agree with it, with that understanding, but I don't know if Mr. Graham, if you're thinking of like actually listening on here, because I don't think you're saying that, are you?
Either take it out or create another category, but it doesn't belong as communication.
I think we take it out
Just
then, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
That's just going to be simpler for me to just do that.
Okay. Fair enough.
Sorry, there maybe it's just a little asterisk that says the district enjoys, the benefit of many other partners in the community.
Yeah.
So that we don't need to list it, but also just in recognition that a lot of times we are, maybe communicating with the library who's hosting an event, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
I get that. I don't know the point in doing that respectfully, Kay, because I don't know what it means to somebody reading this. This is all to,
I think that it would just be, I know that like part of the conversation around why this kind of started anyway
Yeah.
was a little bit about like who has the right to talk about Darien Public Schools on social media, say, for example, right? So really what I'm just thinking about that is that let's say that the Darien Library were to make an Instagram post about an event that they're hosting, right? And it might be a Darien event and it might be sanctioned and partnered, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're speaking on behalf of Darien, yet at the same time they're partnering. That's all it was.
So
It
put a
would-
wee blurb at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, it says here to be updated, that whole document has been updated, other than we'll remove CDSP and put a clarification at the end. Is that all right?
Okay. Yep. So this is on here for action. If we're ready to go, then it would be as amended with the removal of CDSP and the addition of the note comparable to what Katie suggested. And then Alan will need to take this with his staff and apply it to the strategic plan and the board goals to actually show how it's being operationalized.
Sorry, were you talking about us voting on that tonight or?
Yes.
I would actually love for it to come back for a second read with some of those indications about what is currently happening versus what is a hope for the future.
Okay, Joanna?
I was going to ask, since some of this was moved to policy, and then the communication subcommittee is sort of, up for, I don't know if it's up for discussion or it's been,
It hasn't been decided.
okay.
Depending on the
Just,
work.
what, if we kept that committee, what would its purpose be? If we're asking the, administration to operationalize whatever's in here that can be made that way. So it's just looking for some clarification.
So I think for tonight, Marge or Alan, if you guys could address what the next set of work would be, but if we were to commit to keep a committee and if we were not to. I think my understanding is most of this work is, not all, but most is administrative in nature. But if you could speak to that, please, Marge.
Well, I mean, I agree with you that most of the work is administrative, and I think that Dr. Adley's suggestion that we report through the strategic plan, it just, I don't think we need another committee meeting to operationalize this.
Okay.
Or operationalize what we can.
Okay. Alan, anything to add there?
No, we can operationalize this. The actual existence of the coexistence of the committee is a different discussion, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of what was left for the committee to do, I think its remaining action items were to create a communication plan, to request of policy that it take on the question of looking at our communications related policies. Were there any other?
I don't think there were.
No.
I think that was the outstanding items. So, I mean, in my view, I think this is a really good plan. I agree. It would be nice to be able to see what is actually being done currently versus what maybe is a future kind of a priority, because the action list can look pretty daunting. So maybe that would just to put it into groups, just to make it simple, maybe would be a good way to start. Just so we could get something out there and kind of show this as a completed item and then use,
Okay.
integrate it then into the plan.
Okay.
And I would it seems like I would imagine that a lot of that would get flushed out in the operational
Mhm.
rollout, right? You're
Mhm.
figuring out exactly what you're doing, what you need augmented, where efficiencies are, what we can do better versus, based upon the framework that we put in place here.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Unless there are things in here we actively don't want, I'm comfortable taking a look at it from the operational lens through the strat plan. Because I think it has been discussed quite a bit, but go ahead.
I would just say I still have some outstanding questions and concerns around like what exactly a town hall means and what that means with
Sure.
board members. I think some of those parameters are pretty important for us to establish just and how they fit in with what is or isn't constituting a meeting.
Okay, but do you think that is, does that hold up the desire to have a town hall? I think we're probably all in agreement with, then we just need to go forward and figure out the most appropriate way to structure one.
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little uncomfortable voting for something that has a couple of caveats to it, which is why I think I would feel most comfortable if it came back for a second read with a little more discussion.
Okay. Go ahead, Robin.
Just, I remember the committee meeting, and I'm looking at strategy 2, action number 2, which was talking about the town hall meetings annually where board members, district leaders, and community members can openly discuss topics. My understanding, at least what I remember, we discussed this in the committee, and I think what we have done typically when we have a town hall meeting is that it's the district leaders and community members that can discuss topics. Board of Ed members can attend, but are not the ones that are leading it, because that would end up constituting some sort of a meeting. So maybe that could be made a little bit more clear, because we do town halls. You do those all the time on various topics. So that's kind of what I thought was being done already, but I think including Board of Ed members maybe is not the right place for that, I guess.
It's certainly fair to clarify it. Yes, we can do it. Like there's a legal way of doing it, and we can do it. So, but you certainly clarify what those are, what those processes are.
Okay.
And we discussed that fairly at length during the most recent communications subcommittee meeting.
Okay. So understanding that there's some things that are to clarify, I'm going to move it. If people don't want to vote for it now, that's fine, but just so we can close out whether we're moving on or not. May I have a motion to approve the communication plan? So I
Second.
move, Dennis will second. Okay. All right. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Joanna.
Is asking for the communication plan to come back, is that separate from agreeing that we don't need a communication subcommittee anymore?
Correct. That we have not had the communication subcommittee discussion. We've heard from Marge and Alan, but there's nothing formal, and nor is it on the agenda to make that decision.
Okay, so, and just approving the plan tonight does not preclude the ask for more information and more details in that
Yes.
prioritization. And this is
Yes.
approving the general the
Yes.
gist of the communication plan.
Yes, and in fact, I think when we look at the master agenda, if it passes tonight, we probably need to think about when we would have a sort of an operationalized communications discussion in the near future. Okay, any more discussion? All right, all those in favor? That is Walsh, Grambling, Brown, Maroney, Nelson, McCammon, Parent. John, what are you?
Sini.
Sini. All those opposed? Loveland. Okay. With that, the motion passes. Thank you all. Okay. And thank you for the work on it. All right. Now we move on to the master agenda. This first part is the existing master agenda, which is just through February. And then the next bit will be February through August, that subsequent 6 months. So discussion on revisions to approved board master agenda for August 2024 through February 2025.
So this particular document just sort of memorializes, cleans up kind of what we've done since August 24, takes out some things that maybe don't really have a place anymore, and adds some things in that we think may be important. The changes are all in red. I'm not going to go through all of them. You may want to have to take a wee bit of time to you'll need a wee bit of time probably just to read through this. So we have a couple of parking lot topics: non-lapse in account, progress reports, revision update, data dashboards, special education discussion, special education self-study. But they have been, some of those have been put into the February 25 through August, and also the update of where certain tasks have are they in progress or completed or otherwise. So we have a response to all of those actual parking lot issues. We can actually take that off. I just kept it off on there for a moment.
For the record.
Just for the record, yeah.
Okay, Joanna.
On the December 19th, you still have superintendent's proposed budget published on the website. I just thought we're not doing that.
Right. You're right.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're correct. You're right, yes.
Oh, I see.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, any other questions on this agenda?
Yeah, going back to the previous point of the communications, when would we like to have that appear? I'm thinking sometime in March. Is that to mean get through the budget and then roll that out?
Yeah, if you just let us get through the budget process, that probably would be helpful.
So maybe end of March, early April, somewhere in one of those two, the 25th or the 8th, something.
So that'll be the next.
Yeah, that's
agenda.
an active one. That's
Awkward.
Sorry.
Just fine.
Okay. Ding.
Oh, Dennis, if I may, do we need a discussion on this for discussing the wind down of the communication subcommittee?
We do.
That's a good, yeah.
You want that January 14th to discuss?
How long is that policy discussion? How many policies are coming back?
On the 14th.
Well, a couple of the policies are going to require the board to make some decisions. They're not just model policies like gift giving and things, so. And the communications drafts, it'll be on there too.
The communications, what will be on there?
The draft policy that Shipman has.
Oh,
on the press.
well, we have a marker for communications committee report, so we can. Although I appreciate the answer to your question. We could just use that item. Discuss it at that time. Unless we want to wait until after, I mean, we're not, unless we want to wait until after we've seen it operationalized, but.
Well, would the administration come back and say, we actually think the Board of Education should be responsible for X, Y, and Z, which would fall to the communications committee, or no?
All right, no problem.
Like,
Yeah.
if you, when you go back and try to operationalize the communications plan, is there a chance that some of those items would be our responsibility, not yours? In which case we may want to have a curriculum. Yeah, so no, okay, so then I don't think we need to.
All right, so let's put it on for the 14th. We can always push it if we need to. Yes, Lou?
Just following up, Sarah, or and Jill, with your advice, are we thinking that if there were those concerns around the operationalization, could we pick that up in policy and maybe put a policy in place to?
Likely,
cover it?
yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right, so we'll add that to January 14th.
Are we just discussing until February 25th right now?
Mhm.
Yes. I'm not totally sure why it's broken up into this particular set of dates, but it always has been. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
Katie?
Just wondering if we need to note on here, a potential adoption of a board handbook? If
Yes,
that
we
would
do.
Maybe fit in with the same conversation?
In the 14th.
14th potentially? Okay.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? All right, so that's just on here for a read. I guess that comes back.
Mhm.
Next agenda item, first reading of board master agenda for February 25 through August 25.
So some of the things in here, you can see a wee bit of redundancy on some of the topics that we've already discussed. I'll point a couple out here. May 13th. This, by the way, this is a literally working draft, okay? So we do need your input here. May 13th, we put in the special education discussion on some of the broader issues that we discussed. May 27th, discussion and possible action on non-lapsing accounts. Should we want to do that or not want to do that?
Do we need to have a surplus in order to do that? Or do you just establish the account?
Yes, you need to
We don't have a
get,
surplus.
So
Yeah, good point.
The parking lot topics on here is the special education self-study just to be determined, and the ELP presentation for the fall. I think either we made that decision administratively or I thought the board did one of the two, but to have that at a different time, split it up.
I think what we identified was that as wonderful and comprehensive as that special education presentation was, it ended up being a lot of topics all at the same time, some of which were operations, some were curriculum, some were early learning, some were new initiatives. So some are budgetary, which we don't really talk about at that time of year because there was a deliberate effort to not make special education all about budget right before the budget season, but there is a budgetary component. We really should be talking about it. So the request is that we think about special education and what the components are. If we can think of an appropriate way to segment some of the discussions. So for example, taking out ELP might be one way to do that. So
And
that's
all that.
what I think
that's
you have
flagged
noted
for
there.
the fall, and
Yeah.
the fall's not defined in these documents, so.
Okay.
It would then be added in.
Yeah. So if you guys could take another look at it with that thought in mind, another look at this agenda, please. It might be that some of the curricular pieces would show up in curriculum meetings. Where there's a close tie, for example. Like there was an example in the last curriculum meeting where we talked about the connection between literacy that, we've spoken to here too. So anyway, if we could think about it through that lens. Thank you. Joanna.
We can now, sorry.
Yes.
Can I ask for something that's not on here yet?
Yes.
I was wondering if we could have a transportation update.
Sure.
It's such a huge budget driver. I don't feel like we have any information that, we would just have here on our own, like that Andy Power could come and, what's the ridership, what are the policies, what's going good, what's going bad. And then see where things are, why they're so big.
Okay.
I agree with that. I think I would like to better understand what goes into that and whether, the whole in my ridership and the policy radius, and if that, because that's a conversation we kind of danced around for a while. And just to have, so the board has a full understanding of what's in the transportation contract, what does it actually mean? Because we have, Rich says he does a great job negotiating, which he does, but what does that mean? And what is, to understand more about that.
Athletics could also be included in like how many if two teams, if a JV team and a varsity team are going to the same school, do they share a bus if they're not, if there's room on the bus or stuff like that.
Okay.
May I just ask one question on that?
Yes.
We're talking about busing and transportation for all students or our in-house transportation?
I think all students.
I think, yeah, it sounds to, I think we probably could use an update
Both.
on both, because I think it would be helpful to hear how programmatically it's going for us, the in-house piece.
Fine, we'll do that.
Thank you. So let's put that in the parking lot and you guys can take a look at.
I mean, I don't think it's not in budget season at all. I think this is, after. And that's why.
And we can figure out exactly what it looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. Robin,
Just on that note, the busing, they stopped doing the opt-in, opt-out kind of option. And again, thinking from a route and a budget perspective, that the students and number of students does fluctuate in each neighborhood year to year. So that might be something that I would think they would want to bring back potentially, to the extent that you might have buses that don't have as many students as they used to a year before. And so I think that would be valuable, actually.
understand.
Yeah.
Okay. Part of it. Okay. Anything else? All right, this comes back for a second read. All right, Marge, personnel report.
Right, I mean, we're still continuing to hire the people who are leaving mid-year.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Follow-up action items.
So from the November 26th, there's a couple of memorandums, the Aspirant Leadership Academy Transition Plan, 5-year forecast, and PLC, some updates that the questions that the board had. We'll have those out this week for the board.
Okay. Any other next steps or questions about what's on here? Okay. Thank you all. With that, I'll move to public comment.
Good evening. If anybody in person or online would like to participate in public comment, please approach the podium or use the raised hand icon and wait to be recognized. Once recognized, please state your name and address for the record and note that you will have up to 3 minutes to comment. We have nobody in person and no raised hands at this time.
Okay, with that, I will say happy holidays, happy new year. May I have a motion to adjourn? Joanna, seconded by Katie. All votes in favor. That is unanimous. Thank you.